Today I'd like to review some commonly confused words and then some ways that we can hopefully learn to differentiate between them and help put them in application. I think it's a pretty well-known fact that nobody's just a natural born speller. None of you growing up knew how to spell anything. You just acquired it through experience with words and exposure to them. And that's pretty common. But one common problem that we run into in English is the fact that a lot of our words are homophones and sound the same, and that causes us some issues sometimes. In addition, we run into the problem that English has a lot of words that appear the same, and that also causes some issues. So what I'd like to do is tell you some commonly confused words that I see a lot of my students having trouble with today, and then a couple of tricks to help you manage those words in your own vocabulary and your usage. The first word that I'd like to start with is then versus then. One trick that I like to use is that then with the H there tells when with an H as well. So if I know that then tells when, I can go ahead and use the process of elimination to know that the than with an A tells me a comparison of two things. Okay. Another commonly confused word that I run into a lot is the word except versus accept. And I like to remember this by looking at the except means to exclude something, therefore that is this word, and the other one is more accepting, and it's got an A, and it doesn't start with the same letters as excludes. Affect versus effect is a commonly confused and troubling word. A lot of us will use one or the other in the wrong place through our writing, and that's a commonly practiced mistake. So the way that I like to remember it is affect with an A is an action word, and I know my action words equal verbs. So when something affects something else, that is an A, and by process of elimination, I know then that an effect with an E is the result or the noun version of effect. Also important to note is already versus already. The way that I remember this is I do a quick and simple test. If I can take out the all from already, then I know that it's the two-word version. If I can't take it out, then I'm stuck with it, and I know that I need it in there. Okay? So, for example, we are already translates fairly easily to we are ready. Therefore, if I want to use already, I can use all in there. If I say I have already done that, I can't say I have ready done that and have the same meaning. So I need that all attached to the word ready. The next one is desert versus desert. And who doesn't want more dessert if we think about it? Everybody loves dessert. And that's what I use to help remind me which spelling is correct. I want more dessert, therefore dessert has two more S's. Or it has more S's, has one more S, it has two S's. So I use that little device in the repetition of the S's to remind me that dessert is what I want more of. Nobody wants to be in more of a desert. I can't think for the most part. Maybe there's somebody, but they're probably a little strange. The next one is feel versus fill. Okay, and the way I like to remember this one is feel with two E's looks just like feelings. Okay, and when I remember that, it's easy to understand that this is the emotional connotation, where this is to place something within another thing and fill it up. Okay, it's versus its. Now this one can be slightly confusing. We tend to associate apostrophes with two things. First, contractions, which is where we've taken a word or two words and made them into one, such as it is into its. But we also tend to associate it with possessiveness. If something is Mr. Jernigan's, we use an apostrophe S to indicate that it belongs to Mr. Jernigan. However, we don't do that when it's a pronoun that we attach it to. If you think, for example, of mine, his, her, or its, doesn't have an apostrophe on any of those words. So I use the contraction in this case to tell me that or the apostrophe, to tell me we're looking at a contraction. Therefore, its is short for it is. And its without the apostrophe then signals to me that we're looking at a possessive pronoun. It belongs to it. Are versus are is another one. I like to use the A in are to remind me that it's an action word and therefore a verb. Are shows that something belongs to us. There versus there versus there. Now, this is probably the most common mistake that I see in high school writing, at least from my students. I like to use the apostrophe rule that I talked about earlier, and to know that there, T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E, equals a contraction for they are. And once I've done that, I've narrowed it down to two. I also like to and can look at the word there and realize that here is a place word, and so too is there. And if you don't quite connect with that one, you can also look at there, this first version, and look at the fact that it has heir in it. If someone is an heir of something, something belongs to them. Thus they have possession of it. Thus this is the possessive pronoun for they, there. Two versus two versus two. This is a simple one, and oddly takes a lot of people by surprise, and they mess this up a lot. One way that I like to remember it is two with two O's has too many O's. That means excessively too many. Therefore, if something is too much or excessive, I use the one with too many O's. I also like to look at the number form of two and see that it has a double U in it. Well, double is two, therefore I'm looking at two, the number. Your versus your, once again, this is an apostrophe contraction versus a possessive pronoun. Possessive pronouns don't require apostrophes. Your, on the other hand, stands for you are. The next one and the last one that we're going to go ahead and look at is where versus were versus we're. This is really hard because they look alike, they sound alike kind of, but they're all a little bit different. So obviously we've talked about the contraction rule here. This is short for we are, so I'll use that to remember that, the contraction there. I also like to remember that where in this form tells me place because it says here in it. So I'm able to tell that we're looking at a case of place. Where, in this case, I like to think of people wearing earrings or wearing earbuds. Anything that you can wear on your ear reminds me that this is to wear something. Okay? And then finally, that leaves us with the verb were, which is the past tense, right? So pretty easy, hopefully. I think the biggest problem that we get is we get going and clipping along, and sometimes we make these mistakes, but hopefully we're able to recognize them after this. Good luck with the quiz, and hopefully we'll see you on the flip side.